So is this something you don't do in Japan? You don't film without permission.
And that brings me to like another don't in Japan. I think that when people come here, don't sleep on having portable Wi-Fi or something like that. Because
Oh, I remember you telling me about that. Yeah.
yeah, there's so much to do and to see here, and it's very. I personally don't think it's easy to get lost, but if you've never been outside of America before or whatever, I guess it could be a little bit challenging for some people. If you have internet with you, it makes all the difference. And these days, there's stuff like eSIMs that you can get, like eSIM cards, where you don't even need to go anywhere or carry a device with you anywhere. You can just pay online and download an eSIM and have access to Wi-Fi. And that's so helpful for like Google Maps. It's really helpful for Google Translate. And I think with those two apps, you will
Such
get
a game
around.
changer, because when I visited, like, this is gonna date me, right? But like, I had a paper map, right, that I took everywhere. It was in my back pocket. Had a paper map, and I remember researching the places I wanted to go to in each city.
Yeah.
So I would have like the paper map, and I would circle just about where like the restaurant I wanted to go to was, or the record store, or like, and then if I couldn't figure it out, I would like, because obviously all the computers in like the capsule hotels were all in Japanese, so I didn't know how to use them. So I was using like a PlayStation Portable to search for stuff, right? Because you could hook up to the Wi-Fi somehow.
Dang,
and like,
that's creative, man.
That's like what you had to do, right? Like, I remember, okay, so this is like Tangent City, right? But like when I was traveling out there, records and CDs were still very, very big, right? And I remember getting really into like electronic dance music at the time. And there was a Tower Records, I think it was in Roppongi, maybe?
Yeah.
I don't remember. I think it was Roppongi. Go up there, I buy a couple of CDs, and I remember going back to my capsule hotel. I was able to use the public computer, and I popped the CD into the computer, navigated my way around Japanese windows, and was able to download all of the music from the CD to my PlayStation Portable.
Dang.
And then walk around listening to music. I was like, damn,
dude,
I felt so good.
Yeah, that's like infinity brain.
It was like such an accomplishment. And but now when I think about it, I'm like, oh my god, like imagine like when Rachel and I were in Scotland in 2019, and I'm sorry, 2020, right before everything closed, and everyone spoke English, like the Queen's English, right? So it was easy to communicate. But the game changer, honestly, was like a SIM card. We didn't have eSIM, so you just bought a SIM card with data, and we used it for maps or to like look up restaurants or whatever, because sometimes you didn't have Wi-Fi access. And now thinking about it, you're right. Like, don't sleep on like portable Wi-Fi. Right? Don't sleep on SIM cards.
It's so important. It'll really help you out. It's not very expensive, and it will just let you get the full experience that you want. You know, there's nothing like there are some people who, when they travel, they like to plan out their day 100%, and I used to be like that. I'm not anymore.
Yeah, I don't do that anymore.
Yeah. I'm in the moment. I'm in Akihabara right now, and I just checked out this thing, and I really want somewhere good, and I want to be able to pull out my phone and just Google like best restaurants near me, and then like go to the one that looks like it's got the highest rating.
That's the best way to travel.
The Google review game here is insane. So like Maylin from Geeks Plus Trash Taste, you know Maylin.
Yeah, the boss. The boss lady.
She's like a professional Google reviewer.
I feel like
her.
I heard that. Yeah.
I love her. I could worship at her feet. I think she's so amazing. She just goes around to restaurants trying them and leaving reviews, and she's in like the top 10 or 5% of people in Japan leaving reviews at restaurants or something. So
that's so
you never
crazy.
know. You could run across one of her reviews if you go out and look for restaurants in Japan.
I love that. That's one thing I would love to do out there, is just like restaurant hop, right?
Dude,
so not bar hop. I would restaurant hop and just love to like do reviews. But because I love doing it on video, that's another thing. So, okay. So is this something you don't do in Japan? You don't film without permission, right? Is that a rule? Or can you kind of like, okay, so I've heard things from people about like, if you have your cell phone and you're just kind of like, oh, you're doing a thing and nobody cares. But if you bust out like a DSLR, they're like, what are you doing? Why are you filming stuff?
Yeah, I think there's a level of covertness in Japan that you should employ. I think it's kind of kind of depends on what you're doing. If you're out there with a DSLR and it's very clear that you're getting footage, I think when people see such a big camera, they are kind of thinking to themselves like professional. Like this is someone who's doing a professional thing, right? Because it has that feeling with it of like, you know, oh my God, they've just brought like a camera bag filled with equipment. Like, what are they doing? What are they trying to record exactly? You know?
Right.
And in that case, I would either like put myself in a corner where like no one is doing anything or looking at me, or I would just explain to them like I'm, you know, recording for this or for that or whatever.
I am YouTuber.
Yeah. If you're recording someone's face, that's a no. Don't do that. Don't do that. You should ask for people's permission if you want to record their face, or if you want to record someone doing something, like you're in a restaurant and the server's bringing you your food, like you should ask if that's okay. You should not just pick up a camera and record people. I think that's true of any place you go, whether it's in your country or in a different country. Like, you don't have the rights to film someone else doing something. You know, if you happen to catch people on the street like walking around you, that's one thing. But if you're purposefully recording someone performing an action that you're gonna be like showcasing, you need to ask
I'm gonna ask a selfish question because, but I also think anybody visiting might garner some knowledge from this. Is that, would you recommend even bringing like a professional level camera, maybe for photos or something? But like, is it just better to bring the latest iPhone or Samsung or whatever?
I think it depends what you want and what you're going for. But personally, if you're just going, I wouldn't. If I'm being honest with you, I've done the DSLR thing in Japan. I've schlepped cameras and stuff around. I just want everyone to remember, there's no space in Japan.
Right.
Like, this is a don't assume that there's going to be a space for you to put all of your things, and that in like a restaurant, you know, like obviously a restaurant can accommodate your purse and your coat and you know, whatever. But if you're hauling around a bunch of stuff with you, there's just not space to set that up usually. Like, there's no room for a tripod, and there's no room for you to be moving around and getting in other customers' way, and people will not like it if you are inconveniencing other people.
No, that makes sense. It's just being like a decent human being at that point, and you're not the center of the universe kind of thing.
Exactly.
Because when I go out there, I definitely want to do food reviews. So we were trying to figure out the logistics of like, okay, do we just buy the latest smartphone, spend the money, which are usually the same price as quality, like a freaking DSLR these days, right? But then it's a great phone, it's a great camera. You can just use like a dongle for audio, and then you're set. And it's almost professional grade. And then we would have just a camera for like just on the side.
I would almost recommend that. It's just easy, it's more transportable, and it's more covert. People don't look at that and think like, oh, they're recording something for a TV show. They're just like, oh, this is a tourist doing their tourist thing, recording whatever. Or YouTuber, like you're like an online social media person.
Have you seen, speaking of using like photography equipment, like in a different country, in Japan in this case, have you ever seen Best Ever Food Review Show? Have you ever seen that YouTube channel?
I've heard about it. It's so familiar to me.
You should binge it. It's fantastic, right? But they did an entire series in Egypt where all of their gear was commandeered. They landed in Egypt. They had a fixer, so they had someone helping them, and it just, everything fell through. They had like 60 grand worth of equipment just commandeered, and they had paid apparently about $100,000 to get their team there to do a 2-week thing in Egypt.
Wow. Yeah.
They did the entire series on iPhones, and it was beautifully done.
Yeah.
So I'm like, all it takes is a little bit of creativity and some covertness. Not to say that you're trying to do anything shady, but like if I want to do a review of some sushi, I don't really want to bust out the like giant camera with like the wide lens or something. It's going to look pretty. Yeah. But is that necessary?
I think usually not. And if you're going to, I would ask them and let them know why you're there, and like, hey, I'm recording for this purpose. Best Ever Food Review Show? Okay, wait. I've been to Egypt, and I was not impressed by the food at all. So I'm gonna have to check that out.
He said he did really like the food, but yeah, there were words said about how they were treated. Even after having permission to film and stuff like that, because every country is different. If you come into, a place out here and you bust out a DSLR anyways, like into a restaurant, they're also going to be like, hey, can you not record in here? without permission. It's the same rules for the most part. But then as maybe a tourist, or in my case, like as a creator, I have to consider, hey, maybe I should get the table in the corner where I'm filming and like it's just the wall behind me.
Yeah.
You know, like have a little bit of like common sense in that regard,
Yeah.
where you're not trying to stuff a camera in anybody's face. And that's because I hear that's a big no-no, because privacy is a big deal in Japan.
It is a big deal. And